Essentially, this is just a game. The idea is, can we try and break out into one of the final thirds and score a goal? Now, to start with, if we do manage to get it into the final third, it's just a 1v1 against the goalkeeper. Amy Price, Women's National Coach Developer, and the session we're looking at today is on turning and focused specifically around the youth development phase, so roughly aged between 13, 14, 15 years old. So the objectives of this session is to try and score goals. This can be an outside pitch, an inside pitch, but the key is that there's a goal at each end, there's two teams, one team's playing against the other. Can we try and get in behind the opponent and score goals? So the session is an underload and overload game. The team defending this side, which is the yellows, has one less player than the blues who are defending this side. And the middle area, as you can see, is marked out with some lines. And then the final thirds for each team, you'll see that they're slightly different in depth, different length in depth. And the point of that is to provide more space going this way to get in behind and score a goal. Less space this side to get in behind and score a goal, which hopefully would provoke different thought processes for players in terms of the types of turns they might have to use, depending on the space that they've got to accelerate into. The benefits for players on match days is, in this middle third, is quite congested, because of course the purpose is to try and break out of here, so it's deliberately quite congested. So therefore players are going to be receiving the ball, probably with pressure quite tight to them, and that's probably quite realistic to the game, especially in midfield areas, especially when we're close to the goal that we're trying to score in. And also, the other sort of realism to the game as well is when you do try and get in behind, and if you are successful in that, so you've turned and managed to attack into the space, is the idea of at pace, facing forward, ready to either finish or potentially sliding in a teammate. Then with those defenders recovering back to get pressure on you from a different direction, nearer to goal, might mean that you have to adjust and adapt before scoring and connect with a teammate. Okay, so the way the practice will start is you can have the ball with the goalkeeper. Now, what you'd expect to happen here is potentially 5 or 6 just dropping in to receive. Or, if you wanted to challenge your players, you might actually encourage the goalkeeper to step out with the ball and then play in 5 or 6 into the middle zone where there's less space and it's more congested. Hopefully, in a situation where maybe the 5 or 6 has to try and find an opportunity to turn against the player who's marking them. Of course, the goalkeeper doesn't have to play into 5 and 6 if possible. Probably one of the most effective passes could be into the 9. Again, the 9's probably going to be marked. So how can the 9 find a way of holding up the play or finding a way of turning early and quickly to maybe play in a teammate in behind or to take the ball herself in behind? So essentially this is just a game. The idea is, can we try and break out into one of the final thirds and score a goal? Now, to start with, if we do manage to get it into the final third, it's just a 1v1 against the goalkeeper. And the idea of that is maybe a time restriction, so you could put, say, 2 or 3 seconds to score a goal in that moment. So they'll get some repetition at finishing, and the goalkeeper will get some repetition at saving as well. If we can't necessarily find that penetrating pass into the 9 straight away, and maybe the goalkeeper has to play shorter into a teammate, actually this player might not be able to turn, so she might have to play the way she's facing back into the goalkeeper. So the goalkeeper becomes really important because she's supporting from behind the ball if players can't turn and face forward to link up with their teammates. So the reason why, to start with, it's a 1v1 in the final third is because we want to focus the idea of turning with an individual, and once they have got into that final third, we want to encourage that player to stay on the ball themselves rather than looking to play a forward pass into a teammate who might be joining them. But we will progress that as the session goes on to provoke a little bit more decision making in the final third from teammates and the opposition. So another way of starting this practice is from throw-ons in the middle third. And the reason why I'm saying throw-ons from the middle third and not from one of the other thirds is because if we're going this way, for example, and 6 might be taking the throw, she might find an opportunity to throw in towards a player who can turn on one touch or even no touches and try and get in behind really early from a throw-on. So that's just another way of potentially restarting the practice. One progression for this activity might be that you make the area tighter, because essentially in this middle zone is where we're trying to break out from. If that is smaller, then there's less space for players, and therefore they will be marked more tightly by players, by opponents. So therefore the ability to turn might become more challenging if the area is smaller. You might also see different types of turns if there's a tighter area. So turns with more touches, where the ball is more close to the player's body, compared to the current size of the middle area, where there might be opportunities for players to let the ball run across their body and turn and take a big touch forward. The next progression, if the ball does get into the final third and it is that 1v1, we're now saying that a defender can recover back in and apply pressure to that player. That might provoke her to have to actually slow down and turn either inside or outside. But also a teammate can join and create a passing option, and another defender can follow. So essentially we've got a 2v2 in the final third now, which hopefully will encourage different types of turns again in the final third, and some combination play between the two forward players. How you decide which of your players will play on the team with more players compared to playing on the team with less players might be dependent on what you know about them as individuals and what they're working towards. So from a technical, tactical point of view, there might be a player who maybe plays as a centre forward, and what she's trying to practice at the moment is receiving under extreme pressure and being able to turn out of that pressure. So she might be the striker for the team with less players up against maybe 2 centre-backs, receiving with her back to goal and then trying to find a way out. Compared to, you might have a player who needs to practice her ability to receive more quickly with less touches, maybe by letting the ball run across her body to face forward more early. And so therefore, you might put her on the team with 7 players, with more players, because you feel that there's probably a better chance that she'll have that opportunity to turn early with less pressure and drive into the space.